There is a part of healing that people do not talk about enough. Not the inspiring part, not the part with the quotes, the breakthroughs, or the beautiful lessons people share after everything is already over. I mean the quiet part, the confusing part, the part where healing does not feel empowering at all. Because sometimes healing feels lonely before it feels peaceful. Sometimes it feels like losing interest in places you used to go. Sometimes it feels like outgrowing conversations that once felt normal. Sometimes it feels like becoming quieter, slower, more selective, and not fully understanding who you are becoming in the process. And that can be unsettling. Because when people talk about healing, they often make it sound like a clean upward journey, as if once you choose better for yourself, everything immediately starts making sense. But real healing is rarely that simple. Real healing often begins with disruption. It begins when you can no longer comfortably stay in patterns that once felt familiar. It begins when what used to distract you no longer works. It begins when what used to feel acceptable starts to feel heavy. It begins when your soul gets tired of surviving in ways your body once learned to tolerate. And the strange thing is, this can make your life feel emptier before it feels fuller. Because you start letting go. You start noticing, you start setting boundaries. You start telling yourself the truth. And truth changes your relationships with everything. It changes how you spend your time. It changes what you laugh at. It changes what you can ignore. It changes what kind of energy you can be around. It changes what you are willing to accept even from people you care about. And that change is not always celebrated. Sometimes people become uncomfortable when you start healing, not because you became cruel, not because you became arrogant, but because your healing interrupts versions of you they had grown used to. The version that stayed available no matter how drained you were. The version that tolerated too much. The version that kept smiling through things that were slowly hurting you. The version that made life easier for everyone else, even when it was making life harder for you. So, when you begin to change, some people may not call it healing. They may call it distance, they may call it attitude, they may call it being different. And they may be right. You are different because healing does change you. It teaches you that peace is not the same as pleasing people. It teaches you that being needed is not the same as being loved. It teaches you that just because something is familiar does not mean it is healthy. It teaches you that protecting your heart is sometimes more important than protecting an image of being endlessly easy to deal with. But knowing all of that does not always make healing easier. Sometimes it still feels lonely because growth often creates a gap between who you were and who you are becoming. And that gap can feel uncomfortable. You no longer fit into your old life the same way, but your new life has not fully formed yet. You are not who you were, but you are still becoming who you will be. And in that in-between space, loneliness can show up. You may feel less understood. You may feel less interested in noise. You may spend more time alone. You may stop forcing yourself into spaces that leave you feeling empty. You may start craving depth in a world that often rewards performance. And all of that can make healing feel isolating, especially if you were used to measuring connection by how busy you were, how included you were, or how often people reached for you. Because healing changes your hunger. You stop wanting just attention. You start wanting sincerity. You stop wanting just company. You start wanting safety. You stop wanting just activity. You start wanting peace. And peace has a way of making certain forms of noise harder to tolerate. This is why healing can look like withdrawal from the outside. But often it is not withdrawal, it is recalibration. It is your inner world slowly learning that it no longer wants to be fed by chaos, confusion, or constant emotional hunger. And that is a beautiful thing. Even if it does not feel beautiful yet, I think one of the hardest parts of healing is accepting that becoming healthier can temporarily make you feel more alone. Because when you stop abandoning yourself, you also stop participating in some of the dynamics that once kept you connected. You stop over-explaining. You stop chasing. You stop shrinking. You stop laughing at what hurts. You stop saying yes when your heart means no. You stop trying to earn love by being endlessly convenient. And yes, Those changes protect you, but they can also reveal who was connected to the real you and who was mostly connected to your availability, your silence, or your emotional labor. That realization can hurt. It can make you question people. It can make you question yourself. It can make you wonder whether healing is worth the discomfort. But it is, because loneliness in healing is not always a sign that you are doing something wrong. Sometimes it is a sign that you are finally refusing to keep betraying yourself just to feel included. And that matters. There is a loneliness that comes from being unseen, but there is also a deeper loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people while living disconnected from yourself. And many people stay in the second kind of loneliness for years because it looks socially acceptable. They stay busy, they stay agreeable, they stay reachable, they stay surrounded. But inside, they feel far away from their own voice. Healing may reduce the noise around you for a while, but it can also bring you back to yourself. And that return is worth everything. Because once you begin to hear your own needs clearly, once you begin to trust your own boundaries, once you begin to recognize what peace actually feels like in your body, it becomes much harder to settle for anything that costs you your inner stability. That is the gift inside the lonely part. You become more honest, more grounded, more aware, more careful with your energy, more respectful of your own limits, more able to tell the difference between what feels exciting and what feels safe, between what looks close and what actually nourishes you. That kind of wisdom is not loud. It does not always come with applause. Sometimes it comes quietly through solitude, through reflection, through tears, through distance, through learning how to sit with yourself without running. And maybe that is why healing changes people so deeply. Because it is not only about feeling better, it is about becoming truer. Truer about what hurts you. Truer about what you need. Truer about what kind of love you want. Truer about the environments that drain you. Truer about the habits that were never really helping you heal, only helping you avoid. So if healing has felt lonely lately, maybe this is what you need to hear. You are not failing because your life feels quieter. You are not broken because some connections no longer fit. You are not cold because you need more peace. You are not doing it wrong because growth feels unfamiliar. Sometimes healing gets quiet before it gets beautiful. Sometimes it clears space before it fills it. Sometimes it asks you to walk through an in-between season where not everything makes sense yet. But that does not mean nothing is happening. It means something deep is changing. It means you are learning not to confuse chaos with love. It means you are learning not to confuse familiarity with safety. It means you are learning not to confuse being surrounded with being known. And those lessons take time. So be patient with yourself. Let healing be honest, not performative. Let it be slow, not rushed. Let it be real, even when it feels lonely, because peace is not always loud when it arrives. Sometimes it begins as one quiet decision to stop returning to what keeps hurting you, to stop forcing what no longer fits, to stop choosing noise over truth, to stop leaving yourself behind just to feel less alone. And maybe that is where real healing begins, not when everything suddenly feels perfect. But when you finally decide that being true to yourself is worth walking through a quieter season to get there,